This is the Honda GC190 engine that came on a tiller that we bought for our garden about about 4 or 5 years ago, and we've used that tiller almost exclusively for our garden, for up to tilling maybe a quarter of an acre at a time. It's a Cub Cadet tiller. It's been a great tiller, and I got it specifically because it had this Honda engine, and I've had engines in the past that no matter how much you take care of them. I had Sears, riding lawnmowers. I've had a lot of Briggs and Stratton engines on push mowers, and I've always heard that a Honda engine will pretty much last forever if you take care of it. So we took care of this and kept the oil changed, didn't try to use it too hard, and kept it always covered up, kept it in an enclosed environment, never left it out in the rain. But this year, right as we were getting going on our garden, the bearing broke on it. Anyway, so I figured the tiller was toast at that time. That's the tiller there, and so we went most of the summer without a tiller, which was extremely hard. And but then we found out about Harbor Freight has this engine, this Predator engine now, for $99, and it's a direct fit for these horizontal shaft engines, which is the engines you have for a tiller, where you have this shaft coming out of the side instead of the bottom. And so we went and bought one of these $99 Predator engines, and it is really an easy install. The bolt pattern is pretty standard for all of these applications. You got 2 in the front and 2 in the back. That's it. And these kind of mount from underneath is where you need to loosen them from. But you see down there, the bolt pattern is exactly the same. And you basically just take off your old engine and whatever application it's being used for, whether it's a lawnmower blades or, in this case, a pulley on the side for the tiller. And that's the hardest part. And mount it back on and put everything back together. I had to buy this shaft collar at Tractor Supply because the shaft on these Predator engines comes out farther than on the Honda. You can see that it's a much shorter throw there. If you imagine the pulley starting here, it would come almost all the way out to maybe within a quarter of an inch of the end there. Whereas on here, you see how much space there is between the pulley and the end of the shaft. So these pulleys are actually 2 pieces, and in the middle of them there's a little gear. I mean, I wouldn't even say gear, it's grooves, and these have to push together, and it has to be on there really tight, and that's why you need a good collar shaft, or get a shaft collar, I'm sorry, because when this pulls tight, if this isn't pushed on here tight, these 2 pieces are going to separate and you're going to lose all your power. So I just tighten this down with the nut inside the groove that's provided, thankfully. Predator gives you a groove on the shaft, and that's good because these pulleys are grooved so they mount right on. And all you have to do when you get these is fill it with oil. And I used a Valvoline 100% synthetic oil, and I filled it full of non-ethanol gas. It says that it'll take 10% ethanol, just not E85, but I've talked to too many small engine repairmen who say never use ethanol gas in a small engine. So the one thing about this, though, is that if you read the instructions, and you have to read the instructions very carefully, there's one paragraph in the instructions that you might otherwise miss that says that you can't just crank this thing up and start using it. You've got to crank it up, set it on about a half throttle or a third throttle, and let it idle for about 3 hours. And that's the break-in period. And so I just filled it full of gas and oil and cranked it up. It cranks on the first pull. It's a really good starting engine, at least so far. And I just let it run for 3 hours sitting there. And once in a while I'd rev it up once or twice, but pretty much ran it for 3 hours. And so starting is really easy. You just set your throttle up a little, about halfway, put your choke on, put the gas on, set it to on, and it should crank right up. Doing really good. I've already got a little test plot going with tillers, and it actually, this is 6.5 horsepower, and I believe the DC, the Honda, was 6 horsepower. And you can tell the difference in just that 1/2 horsepower. When you run this tiller, it pulls a lot harder, and it actually runs a lot quieter than the Honda did. So take that and see how it goes. I've got the cover off right now. I'll put that cover back on. My one concern is that the cover that goes on the side of the tiller, that shaft comes out so far. I think the cover's gonna be in the way, and I may end up having to cut a hole so that shaft can protrude through. Because I really hate to take a hacksaw and cut the end of that shaft off, because it's already threaded, and you could use that for something later on. So I'd rather it stick out of the cover a little than cut it off. Does really well, and we're real happy with it. For $99, you really just can't beat it. I never would have thought in all the years of having small engines that you'd be able to replace or repower a tool like this for $99, but I guess the real test will be in seeing what kind of life it has. It seems like, reading the instructions, you probably kind of have to baby this a little bit to keep it running for a long time, but that's okay, because we babied the Honda and it still broke. So we'll see how this one does.